All right, this is part two of the week three video. If you This is the first one you're seeing, there's part one where we go through all the games up through Georgia State, Wisconsin. I also explain that I'm just doing kind of an all-inclusive video, two-parter for all of the games this week versus individually. I'll try to do individually still in the future. I just had stuff come up this week, so um, anyways, here we are. We have next up UNLV Central Michigan. Seemingly a good spot to back UNLV because Central Michigan's off of their huge Oklahoma State win that probably shouldn't have counted or shouldn't have officially shouldn't have counted. Plus 13, plus 12 and a half. I hit the opener plus 14 smaller on Sunday just because of the spot, and I figured it would come down. I'm actually surprised it hasn't come down as much, so that might be kind of telling in and of itself. This is a UNLV team that's getting a lot better, and they were down seven mid fourth quarter to UCLA on Saturday, so they're going to be able to hang. They're not a team that gives up, even if they're down 20, 17, 14, whatever late in the game. They're going to be trying to score one more time. Touchdown, Houston. I'm going to have to live bet this because I had a hunch Houston was going to score first, so I actually laid it with them with the intention of betting Cincinnati on the other side back. So, anyways, I'll wait for the extra point and kickoff and then check the line. But nothing for me in UNLV Central Michigan at 13. I was kind of just hoping it would come down to like 10 or 11, and that's where I actually had the number anyways. And I'm a pretty big CMU guy. I had them plus 21 last week. We bet their season wins over before the season at 7 wins. And so I still have this quite a bit lower than 13. So in the end, I'm probably just going to be holding a small plus 14, but not going to get too involved. CMU is legit. Their defense is not only the best in the MAC, but maybe one of the better defenses in the entire country. So if UNLV struggles to score in the end, it wouldn't surprise me. And CMU is going to be hearing all week, "Oh, you didn't deserve to win that game. You don't deserve to win that game." And then they did win. They did win the game. They're going to be hearing about letdown spot, and it's not necessarily a letdown spot. It is the point there. Next game's Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech. This one's a little short. I have Vanderbilt over touchdown favorites, and Georgia Tech is over touchdown favorites. I get why Vanderbilt is getting some love. If you like to bet money line parlays, I think Georgia Tech is probably one of my favorite pieces to use. If you do that, it's a team that I kind of want to buy on in general, even though they didn't look great against Boston College either. But if you look at Vanderbilt, they obviously blew that game against South Carolina at home. And then they had the game last week against Middle Tennessee State that was 6.5 open and closed 2.5. So that tells you they were getting bet against hard last week. And even though they won by like 16 or something, they were outgained by 155 yards or 154 yards. Middle Tennessee State just found this way to get in the gray area. Like it was 5 or 6 times where they were in that like 30 to 35 on fourth down, where they couldn't really kick a 50-yard field goal, and they had to go for it on fourth because you're not going to punt there either, and they just never got it. Like they just couldn't get any points because they kept kicking these field goals, or excuse me, going for it like on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 5, 4th and 6, and they kept getting stopped right there. So they had like almost 500 yards offense. I don't think this Vanderbilt team's very good. Georgia Tech was very close to making my card where it's at right now, and I think you can actually get sixes now for basically straight across even juice. So yeah, Georgia Tech's very close. I might use them just as a money line piece, like I said. I maybe bet one every 2 or 3 weeks, where like two teams like laying about a touchdown, you get plus money on a money line parlay, and Georgia Tech would be one that I would definitely consider using. Next game up is Army at UTEP, which has been bet down quite a bit. If you didn't know, I believe it opened 6, and it opened a little late because UTEP's quarterback, I believe his name's Greenlee. I'm going to double check that because I don't want to say anything. Zach Greenlee. Yep, that's correct. He missed week 2 against Texas, even despite practicing with the team, and so I think he's supposed to go because it's moved from 6 to 3.5. With him, he's a transfer from Fresno State. He's a lot better, and the team's a lot better. So I expect to see a UTEP team score more than 7 points like they did against Texas. So I don't disagree with the move. I had this right at 4, so 3.5 is close enough. I'm just gonna pass. Florida Atlantic, Kansas State. Numbers too high, but I also I don't know. Florida Atlantic's been a weird team to watch play as well, and I'm just gonna not even get involved in this one. I haven't bet their games, in weeks 1 or 2. It's 25 some places, anyways. 25, 25 and a half. I'm trying to recall who it was that Florida Atlantic played in week 1. And I spoke incorrectly because I did play Miami week 2, but that was just a really bad number. It was minus 21.5 open, and there's a reason it closed 25 or higher. Anyways, but week 1 is the game I was trying to recall. They barely beat Southern Illinois, who isn't like the worst FCS school in the world, but they were at home and they needed to win by their one possession late in the game. I think they were outgained in the game. They were fortunate of like a +2 turnover margin in that game just to barely win at the end. So very skeptical of FAU is the point. So even though the number is inflated, I think some like I had at 22. Not going to bet 25 or 25 and a half. Just going to wait and see. FAU could be that bad. And if I recall, Kansas State's off a bye because they played Stanford and they didn't play last week at all. So they have kind of some extra time to prep for Florida Atlantic anyways. So passing on that game. Fresno State Toledo, I have a play for clients in that. So if you missed the first video, you can get my actual personal or client plays at wagertalk.com. Pretty high volume guy. Touchdown Cincy. Good buyout Preston. Get there. Yes. That'll do. Sorry. Got excited. I probably led the league in receivers dropping passes last weekend of teams that I bet on. Louisville was a funny game. I'm trying to recall some of the other ones, but anyways, I had a feeling he was going to drop that actually. Right, just button back live. Oh well, didn't drop it. It's a touchdown. That's good. Anyways, you can get all of my stuff there. I was going to say I'm a high volume guy. We went 15-5 last week. That's a lot of plays. But if I think that we have an advantage or an edge, we're going to bet it. One of those is a bigger play and it actually lost. 2 of them were smaller plays and those lost. So overall, it ended up being like 15-5 plus 10x almost exactly. And this week I think we have 15 up, probably adding at least 2 more that I know of for sure. So, anyways, there's a lot of plays and it's pretty cheap for that reason to get the weekend pass is like $69. Fresno State Toledo is one of those. So if you want to look into that game, Boston College Virginia Tech. This one's strange. Virginia Tech's obviously better than that score showed last week against Tennessee. They went up 14-0. Of course, they I think gave up a 45-3 run after that. They fumbled it 5 or 6 times. I think it was just 5 times. So that's going to be a big reason why when you fumble it and then Tennessee recovers all the fumbles. You might hear my kids in the background. They just got home. And one of them could come upstairs if she hears us talking, and you might get to meet her for a second. But anyways, I think the number's low. I actually have Virginia Tech at like 9. Boston College's defense, though, is like maybe the 3rd best in the country behind Alabama and Michigan. It's right there. So it's tough to really lay like over a touchdown 6, maybe even more with a Virginia Tech team that's coming off a weird loss like that. Just doesn't feel right to bet personally. I'm surprised there's been under money. 41 or 41 and a half depending on where. So, and I believe it opened like 43 and a half. So I should double check that so I'm not giving out bad info. 42 and a half. So it's come down a point and a half. I think I had it like 43 and a half as my number. Yes, and then my buy point's like a 39 or 40. So I'll be looking at that as a potential play. But the side, I understand why it's under a touchdown ultimately, even though my number's a little higher. What you really need to, like when I make my power ratings, and technically it gives me a line that I would line it at, like kind of a raw number, and then I adjust for some maybe injuries or bad situational spots or whatever. But another thing you kind of need to adjust for is the actual total in that game, the actual matchup, because a -9 and a total line 41, that's really hard to cover. That's why it's probably 6. Like if it was 73, then a -9, maybe is more like a -10 or something. If that makes sense. If it doesn't, essentially I'm saying it's harder when totals are expected to be smaller for the favorites to cover bigger numbers. The bigger they get in a total that's so short, it's tougher, and then there tends to be a lot more value with the dog on totals this low. So I see why it's just under a touchdown. Personally, that's why I'm just not going to get involved. It might be one live that I'll be able to play come Saturday. South Florida Syracuse, if you didn't know, that's like my video best bet of the week. We went 2-0 in video best bets week 1. We lost last week with Akron. So we're 2-1 on the season with those like quote unquote free plays, which are actually bets that I make. And if you look at like my client plays that come through on the site afterwards, they're listed there as client plays too. I know a lot of people give out best bets that are like free picks that or like leans or something, which just doesn't make any sense if you're to give out a play you're not actually betting yourself. So Syracuse is one. There's a video. I've been tweeting it out. Go watch it if you want to know why. Ultimately, it's pretty bad overreaction in a number that, oh wow, Houston's going to pop this. Kicker saved the day? Nope. Well, he slowed him down. That was a nice little run there by the Houston returner, 26 Brown, I think. Anyways, the Syracuse game, I had much lower. Plus, it's just I think a really good spot in general. And South Florida hosts Florida State coming up on deck, home game, and yeah, play is on the orange. Well, it's delivered 2 touchdowns. I personally don't think it'll last. It's probably going to be 14 or 13, by kick. Next game, San Diego State, Northern Illinois. It's another client play, so I'm not going to dive into that game. Western Kentucky, Miami, Ohio. I realized from part 1, I was saying incorrectly. People are going to get on me for part 1. I said incorrectly that Arkansas State scored at the buzzer against Alabama. It was really Western Kentucky, now that I'm reading Western Kentucky with my eyes. Arkansas State played at Auburn and got crushed, and it was obviously the Toledo game I talked about mainly, and then got crushed at Auburn in a game that I actually thought got kind of out of hand. The line hit 21 and a half, and then Auburn just rolled by like 37 or something. So anyways, I apologize if you watched video 1 and you already told me I was wrong about that. I do realize that now. I just had said incorrectly who they played, but they played Auburn. Western Kentucky, who we're talking about now, who's playing Miami, Ohio, was the team who played Alabama and scored at the end. PI. Ooh, he got tripped. Houston receiver got tripped unintentionally, I guess. So for this number at 17.5, it is a pass. My current number has it at 18.5, so there's just really no value, and I don't think there was anything surprising about Western Kentucky not being able to score against Alabama. If anything, I was impressed that they held the Alabama rushing game to like 2.7 yards a carry or whatever it was. It was under 3, and Saban was very, very upset after the game in the post game. Talked a lot about how bad their running game was. And by the way, Syracuse just got popped on Pinnacle. Down to 14 now, just as we were speaking. So someone's listening in to my house. Anyway, Miami, Ohio, Western Kentucky. Not betting it, but I do think my challenge that I do, I'm going to be taking Western Kentucky. It feels like a game they're able to take control of the lesser team, and I was impressed by their defense against Alabama actually quite a bit. North Texas, Florida, another pass for me. The number 36, I have 35.5, and it says it's a blowout game that hopefully a blowout for Florida's sake against a really bad program in North Texas. And I don't really get involved with too many totals in those types of games. I've told you guys before in videos, the total 50 is probably fine. And it's just hard to really gauge for those that are maybe watching for the first time. The reason I don't, big sack for Cincinnati. Probably out of field goal range now too. So they might be getting the ball tied up. Anyways, when you have a total like 50, Florida, big, huge favorite, over 5 touchdowns. The only way to really know how that fourth quarter is going to go in a blowout is if you have some sort of inside information about how Florida is going to approach the game late, up 5 touchdowns. Are they going to really slow it down and just, take their foot off the gas? Or are they going to be like Harbaugh-style Michigan and not do that? Even Wisconsin the other day against Akron last week put in their backup, but then he just kept throwing the ball like they were slinging it around in the fourth quarter, which is very unlike Wisconsin. You don't know. It's just a gamble. I don't know. I don't have any inside information from Florida fourth quarter game planning. So, wow, half-yard line. Great punt. Anyways, that's why I don't touch totals very often in those types of games that are huge blowouts, unless they're so short, and I like the favorite too, and I think they're going to cover the total themselves or something. Louisiana Tech, Texas Tech. This is worth mentioning. The number's low at 10.5, 10, but La Tech also might be really good. Not only did they, barely lose to Arkansas. If you guys don't recall, week 1 they were up 6, kicking a field goal late to end the game to go up 9, and they shanked a 39-yarder. Then Arkansas down 6, drove with a minute or 2 left, completed 3 fourth downs just to score the touchdown to win by 1. Then La Tech crushed their FCS goal. They got I think it's their quarterback came back, and they had like 7 yards total offense. So they might be really good. And Texas Tech, obviously, is supposed to be good, and everyone loved them against Arizona State for some reason. So, not surprising in my opinion, I guess, to see a number a little low, just because La Tech's been so strong. But I am surprised because everyone was betting Texas Tech last week, and it's actually coming down the other way. So maybe Texas Tech will get some money, and it'll come back closer to 13 where I have it. But if it doesn't, I guess my point is I wouldn't be surprised either. So for me, it's kind of another game where I just kind of wait and see, like, is La Tech really this strong, or is Texas Tech run D really that bad? And it probably is. So we'll kind of wait and see. The total at 80 is a little high. That's definitely inflated. I had it 74. It takes balls to obviously to bet an under in a Texas Tech game, but I'm sure that has to do with the 347 points we saw, in the Arizona State one last Saturday night. So if you were looking at under in that game, I definitely is high. It's one that I don't have the balls to bet. My volume's so high anyway. If I had to make a play in this game though, it would be under. But for me, also another kind of bit of advice, like that we're talking about low totals, like 41 in that BC Virginia Tech game. That's like, sorry, I've seen if Cincinnati completed third and 9 out of their end zone. That's like a 6 point discrepancy in a total of 41 is worth way, way more, almost twice as much as like a 6 point discrepancy on a total in the 80s. This is like maybe like a 3 point, real, like, similar to a 3 point discrepancy at a total down around 41, which isn't really worth betting, when it's that high. So that's why I'm not ultimately betting it. If I had it like 70, then I'd be betting under. 74.5 versus an 80 is a pass. So, anyways, that's kind of the reasoning there for that. Next game is New Mexico State, Kentucky. This one's tough because I think you're supposed to bet Kentucky. Actually, it's come up to 20. I probably should have bet them. It's just like a standard. Oh, New Mexico State off their huge rivalry win again. Ooh, wow, a flag. I missed what happened, but I guess the Cincy drive stays alive. But yeah, you have New Mexico State beat New Mexico. They were down like 6-9 a lot of that game. They came back and won. So give them credit, and they deserve it ultimately. Hold on, I'm gonna take a drink. The difference, I think, for Kentucky though is that they are getting murdered by teams. Not only did they score 35 in the first half against Southern Miss and go up 24 or whatever it was, they lost that game by double digits at home, and then I think they gave up 42 straight to Florida before they finally scored at the end. Something like that. I'm not looking scores up. I'm just going off memory. I think it was 42-7. Either way, they've looked so bad, but it's a team that's supposed to be improved, and it's a really good spot to look at New Mexico State fade. But then my number's only 17, so I never ended up playing it, but it was lower. It was like 20.5, I think, when it originally opened. It wasn't a flag. They waved the flag. That's really strange. Nice punt, though. It opened 18.5. Geez, so when it really, really kind of settled, though, it was 20.5 like yesterday. And I probably should have bet. I just felt like it was going to go up, even though I thought it was a little bit of a high number. It was just one of those spots where I was pretty certain Kentucky was going to get money, and I probably was going to get a chance to middle if I wanted to, which I didn't. So might have missed on that one. But I think Kentucky's probably the side that's going to get bet. So if you're leaning that way, and I think a lot of people agree with you, I'm staying off. Next is Texas State, Arkansas. Texas State are nothing for me. I still think Arkansas isn't very good. They were the benefit of a pick six, another fumble that led to a touchdown against TCU, a weird PI flag late that kept it going to overtime. I don't know. I'm just not a believer. They're also just a team that does. When we just talked about the La Tech team in week one, I mean, they should have lost to them at home as 24 to 26 point favorites outright. And I know that came down to like 21.5, but it should have. Arkansas is not a very good team to me, and Texas State's a team that crushed Ohio. Crushed. I mean, they went to overtime, but they were 21-point underdogs. Won at Ohio, who then crushed Kansas last week after Kansas took a bunch of money. You can't put money on Kansas ultimately in life. That's just like a life lesson. But sure enough, if you did, you lost pretty badly. And then here you are getting a Texas State team that I think is pretty good, getting like 30.5 points against Arkansas. So for me, it's Texas State or nothing. And I actually might end up adding Texas State. I was slow to bet. I'm at 32.5, and now and so when I hit 31, I was like I kind of bummed out that I missed on it landing 31 being a win, and now it's 30 and a half. So it's kind of just a stubbornness thing. I probably won't be betting it now, but I did make it 28. So excuse me, that's the soda for you if you heard that. The number's definitely high though is the idea. So we're gonna keep watching it. If it comes back to 31 and a half, I think that's my buy point, and I'll be making a play. Ohio Tennessee can't play it. 27 and a half is a good number. Plus you have a Tennessee team that is not going to be looking ahead this time off of a small school. They have their, I think it's a home opener against Florida in the SEC on deck, but they're not looking ahead. I'm not even worried if you're an Ohio fan. I think you're done for. The number's good, so just staying off. Akron 17 and a half against Marshall. Uh, this one's interesting. I'm not afraid to double dip, but I kind of am here for a few reasons. I was wrong on Akron last week, and I think I credit Wisconsin mostly for that. Marshall's a team. This is a really weird spot, and it's 17 and a half. Actually, it was 17 yesterday, so now you're getting a hook on a game I line lower, like 14 and a half. And it's ultimately Marshall played. They were one of the luckiest teams in the entire country last season. Like that's just fact. Like they only outgained opponents by like 40 yards a game, but found a way to go 10-3. Very very weird. Like a 10 and a plus 40 yard team is going to be maybe 7-6 or 8-5, something like that. There were benefits of a lot of weird turnover margin stuff. Fumble luck went their way a ton. A ton of fourth down conversions. Their defense wasn't very good, but on fourth down, they were the greatest defense of all time. Anyway, they only returned 10 from that team that was pretty lucky last season, so they're very inexperienced. This is lined as if it was like a last year's game, and they haven't even played a game yet. Really, they had a bye, and then they played an FCS school that they won. I think they won the game 62-0. So they basically have one scrimmage under the belt. Meanwhile, Akron just played one of the best teams and looking like one of the best teams in the country in Wisconsin. Um, it's a game that I think Akron is the right side. And I might end up making a play here. I'm going to take a little different angle on it. I won't say what that is. It'll be a client play. But yeah, the number is definitely too high. And if you're leaning in any direction, I think Akron's the right side. Oregon, Nebraska. This is another one that I will not play, but I actually think Oregon's the right side. I understand why people like Nebraska. It was like pickish. It's been bet up to 3, now 3.5 some places. And it feels like the side everyone's going to be on. And towards the end of the week, some sharper guys are going to play Oregon, getting a hook. I think I have lined it. Nebraska -1. Excuse me. Nebraska is pretty misleading when you look at their first 2 weeks. Week 1 against Fresno State, they wound up covering the full number, which was very big. It was like 28 and a half. And they were only up 14-10 at halftime. I mean, they're only up 4. They were benefits of, and then the same thing happened against Wyoming. I mean, they were only up 7 in that game late in the third, and they wound up winning by like 31 or something. They're 50-0 in both fourth quarters they've played in weeks 1 and 2, and plus like plus 7 turnovers, I think, just in the fourth quarters. And so that tells you two things. One, they've probably run really good in the fourth quarter, but two, they are also wearing teams down, and they're able to score once their defense has been making plays with turnovers, and they're running the ball in and running down the opposition's defense. So, anyways, my point being is I think the fact that they've covered 2 huge numbers against weaker opponents is why this number here at 3.5 is pretty inflated. Meanwhile, Oregon's kind of gone up huge against Virginia, and then gave up 2 touchdowns late to not cover their big number, but they totally took their foot off the gas, and they almost scored a touchdown actually late. They got called back on holding with a few seconds left that would have been interesting depending on what number you got in that game. Anyways, for me, I think it's a number. If you're just playing numbers, when I do my challenge prop bet where I have to pick a side in every game, Oregon for sure getting 3.5 will be the pick there. UCLA BYU, I have a client play in this one. So if you want to get that, you may go to Wager Talk. Miami, Florida, Appalachian State, I also have a client play. Going to skip that one. Pittsburgh, Oklahoma State. This is a weird one. It's one I'm just going to watch. I really am intrigued to see how Oklahoma State responds to what happened to them. I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of college football that I've ever said, you know what, they probably should change the score, like back on a mistake. And this is like the first time I think like it has viable like reasoning, validity to why you could and why you maybe should. And I normally am the guy that says, whatever. It is what it is. It's a final score, but really the final score should have been when the clock hit 0. And so the last play that happened that was shouldn't have been a judgment call, or people refer to that like, oh, those plays happen all throughout the game. You can't go back and change every one. But when the clock's at 0, you should be able to say, well, then that's the end of the game when it should have been. So I feel bad for them. How are they going to respond to it? Don't know. Pittsburgh almost blew a game to Penn State at home. They did win. They probably don't care about this game nearly as much, especially with conference play coming up too for them. I'm surprised it came down from 6 to 4.5. I had it at 6.5. So I kind of like the Oklahoma State side. Won't be buying it unless it got to like 3. Which I'd be very surprised if it did. But if it does, then I definitely am going to be looking at the Cowboys. The total, I think, was a tad high, but one reason I don't know the numbers. I'm not going to look them up because I'm lazy, but you can look them up if you'd like. But I believe the opener for Penn State Pitt was like 50.5, and it closed 44, the total, and it went way over. It's because Penn State's running a way more up-tempo offense. I whiffed. I should have bought when it got low, like 44 or 45. I should have played over. This total is high because I think because of the Pittsburgh game so far. I'd be wary of playing an over in this game if you're looking at it. The reason that Pittsburgh game and Penn State one was so high is not only did both defenses look terrible, but they run so many plays and you're going to have more points. And it won't be nearly as fast in this spot for this matchup. Okay, UL Monroe, Georgia Southern. There was a really bad opener at 30, plus 30. Just had to. I had this like at 24, so I might even been 23. Yeah, 23. So I had to take the 30, but immediately opened everywhere else like around 25, 25.5 where it's at now. So I can't recommend the play. I think the number's fine. It's hard to really bet ULM at all. I just figured I'd have a decent middle shot. It's come up a little bit. I guess it did open 24 everywhere else, so now it's up to 25.5 and a couple 26s. So now Georgia Southern's getting some money. If it got back to 28, honestly, I think it's worth betting ULM. I think the jury's still out for Georgia Southern in general. You have a team that I think they crushed an FCS school, and then they got South Bama in a really good spot. And I mean, they still I think only won, by 2 touchdowns, and that was basically what the line was. But South Bama was off the big road win against Mississippi State. So yeah, I'm not sure Georgia Southern's a team that can just blow everyone out by 4 touchdowns. So if it gets to 28 for whatever reason, again, that's a buy point for me, considering I have it just under 24. Next game up, I changed tabs. I apologize. Oh, Old Dominion, NC State. I have no clue. I just have to figure out what's going on with NC State. People liked them last week. They got dominated. They never really should have been in that game. A couple times they kind of made runs like they were going to be in it, and they took the lead, I think, even at one point in the third quarter, but then they gave like 17 up in a row or something. So just going to wait and see. Old Dominion probably should have covered against, I think it was App State that they just played week 2, around a similar number. NC State number's a little higher now. I think it was Appalachian State. I believe that the number was like 21, and they were like at 17 forever, and App State scored under a minute left. It got to 24, and I think it was like 31-7 or something like that was the final. So if you had Old Dominion last week, rough beat. I didn't get involved with the game. I wasn't sure how Appalachian State would respond after that Tennessee loss late, or overtime loss. So anyway, this is just another one I'm going to kind of wait and see, mostly to get a better read on NC State. Troy, Southern Mississippi. This is a little bit low. I like -10 or better, but you can't really find it. And I think 10.5. Depending on where you're at, you can get like some 10s, like at -115ish. It's a little low, but Troy also is a team that's kind of one that I liked coming in general, and then they played Clemson really, really well in week 2. So I kind of can get why this maybe is. I think I have it 13. So it's also maybe a good spot to fade Troy, though. It's basically a sell high on Troy. You're never going to get too many spots to sell high on Troy football. So if there ever was one, I think it's here. Man, this Notre Dame Michigan State total keeps crashing. I wrote an article last night, and I said, under 51's probably a buy point for an over. I had it 53.5, and I think the way it matches up, we're going to get to that game in a second. I like over, and I just keep seeing it moving on screen, just like sitting here. It just keeps moving. Anyway, that might end up being a play. It opened 54.5, so it's come down almost 4.5, almost 5 points now. Get rid of it. Drop. I don't think Cincy can even kick a field goal. They should just go for it, 4th and 7. Anyways, passing on Troy Southern Mississippi. But I think if there was ever a time to play against Troy, it's probably this week. Other than that, you'll be too late. UL Lafayette, South Alabama, I have a play in that game, so I will not be breaking that one down. Kansas, Memphis. It seems really hard to be like laying 3 touchdowns with Memphis, but like I mentioned earlier, life lesson: don't bet on Kansas. You will live a happier and longer life. So, I mean, that's a really easy one, just not betting this game. For what it's worth, I think I had it like 18.5. So it's a couple points high, but no Kansas. No Kansas. Here's the Michigan State Notre Dame game. This one I think will be fun. Michigan State, if you guys don't know, played Furman week 1. And honestly, they were probably, I mean, they won the game by 15, but they were only up 8 in the fourth quarter. And Furman, I think, had 2 possessions where they could have tied the game. O'Connor, the new quarterback for the Spartans, very, very big downgrade from Cook. Or at least looked at in this week 1 game. They couldn't even get the run game going. You'd think they would just hand it off every time and run over Furman. They couldn't do that. I don't know if they were looking ahead to this Notre Dame game because they had a bye last week. So they're similar to like Marshall, where they had all summer, spring, early fall scrimmage against FCS school. By this is like their first real game. Notre Dame, meanwhile, has had a big game against Texas under their belt. They played Nevada last week really well. It was a lot better than any FCS school too. It's just a weird spot for Michigan State, and I get why it's 8. That's where my number is. They always seem to play Notre Dame games close, but for me, I think they did probably just overlook Furman. They were basically treating Notre Dame as their season opener, so I expect them to be prepared. Kaiser and company, like the Notre Dame offense is fantastic. Completely obliterated when Kaiser was on the field against Texas. Their defense struggled, obviously, especially their secondary, who now has an extra injury. He tore his Achilles, a cornerback, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he tore his Achilles against Nevada, so he's out. So an already weak secondary is even weaker for Notre Dame. And Michigan State's going to take advantage. And if they can get the run game going similar to how Texas did early, it's going to wear down the front 7, take shots over the secondary. That's why I like this over. My numbers flat make it 53.5, and that's without really breaking down where I see the game going. So now 50. I'll keep waiting. I mean, when I see moves like this, I'm going to play against. I'm just patient, and I'm watching the screen pretty often, like every day. So as soon as it starts coming back up, if it does, I'll jump in and hurry and bet it. But for now, I don't get that. So that's going to essentially be an extra free play if you're watching this video. Is the over in this game. Next one up is Texas A&M Auburn. I had it 4. It's like 3.5 most places. Actually, 3 at Pinnacle, but it's juiced. I don't think this is bettable. I think the number is perfect. I'm not sure what to make of Texas A&M's, 3 quarters against UCLA. They looked fantastic. 1 quarter, they looked terrible. Auburn's looked really, really good in both of their games, which I'm happy to see because they're one of my favorite season win total overs, kind of / surprise teams. So I kind of just going to be rooting for Auburn to win the game. And, the number's pretty good, so I'm not going to get involved, unless it was like pick or something, then I'll jump in and play Auburn, but it's not going to go down there. Duke Northwestern, that's crashed down. It was opened like -1 at the early openers offshore Sunday, got all the way up to 6, and then today Duke's been getting some money and it's down to 3.5. I actually had it 6, so I thought the 6 was pretty good. I think Northwestern under a field goal is probably a good bet if it keeps going down that low. I know they just lost to. They lost 6-9 or 6-7 to Illinois State. I'll look it up so I'm not saying some weird crap. That's the benefit of doing the videos individually. Not only because you get to click which ones you want to watch, but I can look stuff up before each time I push record. It was Illinois State. It was 9-7. So they lost to a field goal at the buzzer, essentially. And then before that, they lost at home to Western Michigan. And Western Michigan's really good. Probably going to win the MAC. So that's not the worst loss ever. Illinois State was pretty bad, especially off a WMU loss. But it's worth noting that I think they're ranked 6th in FCS, and most people think they're the second best team in FCS. So Illinois State's good. And they have a really big game coming up next week, by the way, against North Dakota State, who runs the FCS every single year. So that will be a fun one. If you're an FCS fan, I follow it along because I bet a couple times a week on some of these FCS games. So anyways, I like Northwestern because you're just getting a ton of value in the fact that they've lost two games early, really close ones that were very, very ugly if you actually watched them. But until it gets under three, I hit that, like I said, that opener when it opened one. But until it gets under three, it's not a play. Cincinnati blew a 3rd and 10 out of the end zone. Got to get that stop. Good play call to run a screen, actually, because they blitzed. Ohio State, Oklahoma, client play. Alabama, Mississippi. I've talked about this game so much this week on radio and doing some videos. I don't really want to get into it all, but yes, the number's high. I have it like 7, and I've kind of upgraded Alabama, even though they were already my number one team. I've upgraded them even more because their defense looks like it could be the best ever in the Saban era. And Jalen Hurts, a freshman that was going to take some time, has really emerged as a factor under center like immediately. So got to credit them. But even so, I make it 7, and you can get plus 11 on Mississippi, a team that, sure, I get why it's inflated. Oh, pick 6, go, take it back, take it back, take it back. Take it back, take it back, take it back. Or just to the 20. That was a very bad throw. Very unlike Ward throw. If you guys don't mind, which I hope you don't, I would like to see why he made that decision. So I'm waiting for a replay. I want to actually see the play develop. He stormed down. He stared him down the entire. Oh, the ball came out of his hand terribly. That was just a duck. Oh, the receiver. Okay. Sorry, this type of stuff matters, when you're watching teams play. The receiver just ran a different route. It was basically an option. You run a skinny post or you curl. And Ward read it as he's going to run the skinny post in front of the safety. Instead, he curled, and so he just threw it right to the safety. So that could have been the receiver's fault, actually. But it was a bad pass. It came out super, super bad. Hopefully this isn't just a field goal. Cincinnati needs 7 here. Okay, I apologize. Mississippi, though, I understand it's inflated. Double revenge for Alabama. Saban, they've lost to him twice, but there's a reason that they've lost to him twice, right? Mississippi matches up really well. They don't just run it into the heart of the stout front seven. Alabama's strength, their defense. They're up-tempo, they spread it out, and they throw a lot. It's similar to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M a few years ago beat Alabama. It's a similar type of offense, and it's just a way to attack the Alabama strength. So I personally don't. Geez, they tried to throw an interception, and the Cincinnati guy had to turn into a cornerback. This game's going to be good. It's going to go down to the wire, I think. So hurry and get through these. My throat is hurting anyway. So I'm passing, but if you like Miss, I think plus 7's way too high. I expect it to come down under 10. So it'd be now or never. It's probably one of the closest plays to miss my card. I just, my gut says Alabama does finally to steamroll them. Couldn't tell you otherwise. That's that. Georgia, Missouri. I have a play in this game. Hayden Moore barely short. Whoa, what a spot! One ref was short of the yellow line. The other ref was over. That was a generous spot. I will be tweeting about that. I'll just use my computer. I have a play in Georgia, Missouri. Next game, I believe, is the LSU one. Yeah, Mississippi State LSU, also a client play in this game, actually. I really like this one, for what it's worth. And it's still available. The number's still there if you want it. Go to wagertalk.com. You can get it. Navy Tulane. This one is interesting. It's one that I will probably be adding, so I can't really break it down because it's one of those two that I think is going to be a client play, so I apologize. Hawaii, Arizona. Also have a play that's still available for clients in this one. USC, Stanford. I do not, so I can break this one down a little. The number's high. I had it 6.5, but I get why it's 8.5. I think it even got as high as 9.5, and a little bit of a 10 appeared. So I'm not surprised to see the buyback either. But sitting right over a touchdown makes sense. USC, I haven't really downgraded them despite their throwout game. They're not going to be bringing up that Alabama game ever again all year. They played really well against Utah State. But Stanford also played decently against Kansas State, and they have a bye coming into this, which helps because they have the extra week of preparation. But what's even more interesting, I didn't even know this till last night. I was talking to the CCH guys on the podcast, but Stanford was, I believe, they don't start classes until the end of September. And most schools are like end of August, and USC is one of those. So not only have they had a bye week to prep for USC at home, but they've had a bye week where they've had 2 weeks of David Shaw getting full attention from his players. no homework, no tests, nothing. So it's just been football for them, and I think that's a pretty big edge. That's probably worth a point or two. And so for me, at 8.5, I think that's a pretty good number at this point. Maybe one that I bet live and in game, because I'm not 100% sold on Stanford's offense and quarterback, because if you recall, like they looked okay against Kansas State, especially defensively, but McCaffrey struggled running the ball because Kansas State just stacked the line. And that's what everyone's going to do this year. New quarterback, Ryan Burns is maybe his name, and he was okay because he completed 14 of 18 for a touchdown and didn't commit any turnovers, which is exactly what they want. But if people are stacking the box and you can get McCaffrey at 2 to 3 yards a carry, then Stanford's going to have issues, even when Burns does take advantage of some of his opportunities. So this is one I'm really intrigued to see, and I wouldn't be surprised if USC covered. I'm probably taking USC in my challenge where I have to take a side. Just getting over a touchdown's too much. So that's that. But I think we'll learn more about Stanford here moving on with the rest of the season. We have UCLA on deck too on the road. So they're getting into a really tough schedule, and we'll learn a lot about them in the next few weeks. Texas, Cal, 7. Cal's got some money. It was 8 yesterday, and now they're 7, or some 6.5s even. It was too high, but they're reviewing it. I was going to say that spot was really, really generous. He crawled across. Some guy just tweeted he crawled across. It's true. He was down super short, and then he kind of like used his knees to jump back over. They called it. They're really going to go for it on 4th and 1, and just line it up and run it into the line. That was like the stupidest call. I had to tweet something. Oh well, that's too bad. On 4th and 1 there, it was like a long one. I don't know why you're running it. Just stretch play where you have to run on the outside and give a Houston line that's stacked more time to get pressure inside. Bootleg's wide open there too, freaking every time. Anyways, I hate play calls. I, like everyone else on Twitter, thinks I could run and coach any team in the nation better than they are currently coached. Anyways, Cal was too high. I understand why Texas was inflated. Obviously, the Notre Dame win was nice. Cal's coming off a game where they almost came back and won at San Diego State. Went really late, a ton of points, like 45-40, but they scored late and got an onside kick and almost scored again to win it, and then threw an interception. So it got kind of dicey for Aztec fans and the players. Cal kind of maybe is a little exhausted from that game. Texas had a bye playing UTEP and winning by 31 or whatever it ended up being there. Personally, the only other edge motivationally could be that Texas, if you guys recall last year, I don't remember the exact score. 42-21 rings a bell. Texas was maybe down 3 touchdowns, something like that. And then they scored 3 in a row, and they were about to tie it up at 42 or something. Like literally at the buzzer, like 2 seconds left maybe. And they shanked the extra point, so they actually didn't even get to go to overtime, and they lost to Cal at home. So I'm sure Texas remembers that. That was a game that they, a big momentum game where they had scored 3 in a row. I think it was 3 touchdowns in a row to maybe win this game at home and get things going. And then your guy shanks an extra point. You don't even get to play overtime at all. So I kind of lean Texas now that it's under a touchdown, even though that's right where my number's at, just for a couple of the extra kind of situational reasons. So nice defense from Cincy. Get it right back. Good for them. But now you say, well, they should have taken the field goal, which probably isn't true. But they should have ran a different play than a stretch run on 4th and short. It's just the worst. Like literally a stretch run where everyone's going to sideways when all you need to do is go north and south for a yard, and your running back, the entire play call is developed to have him wait and be patient and wait for a hole to open and then go. But when they have 9 or 10 in the box on a 4th and short, then there's never going to be a hole that opens, and then he had 3 guys on him 4 yards in the backfield. Like, that was literally the last 4th and 1 call next to Hail Mary that I think you could make, honestly. That stuff really tilts me. As you can tell, I'm like legitimately upset about life right now. Plus 11, plus 10.5, Buffalo at Nevada. Nothing for me. I think Nevada bounces back from their loss to Notre Dame, probably takes care of Buffalo like they're supposed to. I also had my line over 10, so now that it's at 10, 10.5, it originally opened 9.5, I believe. So, let me double check that. Okay, the 9.5 must have been like just the bet online offshore opener. So it looks like 10.5 everywhere, and then there's 11s now. 11s. Okay, I should have refreshed my sheet. Anyways, I'm not surprised to see 10.5 and 11 at all. That's right where I had it was 10.5, and I think it's a good spot for Nevada in general to kind of just get some momentum under their feet again before they head into Mountain West Conference play. Completely passing, and the total spot on it, I had it 51, and that's where it is most everywhere. Um, Utah San Jose State. I haven't made a play here. I've been waiting for 14 to play San Jose State. Honestly, the number's decent enough, but it's a really bad spot for Utah. I'm going to be patient. I don't think there's really much of a difference waiting on 13. If San Jose State gets a bunch of money, so be it. I'll play 13 as quick as I can, or 12 and a half. I think there's more value waiting for a potential 14, and the value in getting a push there. Them playing 12, 12 and a half, 13. They're not very key numbers. And ultimately, just think it's a bad spot, like I said, for Utah off that huge BYU win, where a game they probably should have lost. And then they obviously have Pac-12 play coming up on deck. And San Jose State seems like a team that's kind of underachieved to this point. People are, people are actually Esso. I don't know if he watches these, but he just tweeted at me about the freaking stretch play on 4th and 1. It's literally the last call ever that you are supposed to make. It's probably less EV than Hail Mary now that I'm thinking about it more. Anyway, San Jose State, night and day, I think, at home and away. If you look at their games in the past, similar spot. They played BYU a couple of years ago, won outright. Not as big a dogs as this, but their offense is really good. It's a team I liked coming in. Then they got trucked by Tulsa, and I think they're kind of just a little bit undervalued. The numbers, like I said, there's not a ton of value between like 11, 12, 13, so I hadn't bet it yet, but that's why I'm waiting for 14. There's a 13.5 in Vegas, but I'm not going to lay minus 120 on a 14. Personally, I might also look at like plus 7.5 first half or something like that. So if you're leaning San Jose State, I do think that's the right side. Wouldn't be surprised at all if they actually won this game. You guys know I take some shots on moneyline dogs for fun, and first week we did really well. Second week didn't so much, although we should have gone 2-2. But again, the 4th and shorts on the goal line, or 4th and 1, teams don't know the right plays to run. Anyway, they're like plus 400 on the money line. I think that's a decent shot worth taking. Next game is the last one, Idaho Washington State. Going to be interesting to see how Washington State responds to obviously their loss to the FCS school, but then playing Boise and kind of crawling back into it and having a shot to win late and falling short. So the number's supposed to be right there at 26. Is it 26.5? Yeah, okay. I think that's fine. Idaho's a team that actually played Washington a lot better than the Squirrel show. Pick six, and he dropped it. What a read. He actually read it so well he overshot the ball. I had to reach back. That should have been a pick six. Oh, never mind. It hit him right in the numbers. He just dropped it. Holy cow. That's 14-7 every time. I'm surprised I don't have Houston. Those are the types of drops that was happening to me like all weekend. Anyway. Idaho, Washington State. I'm going to end this because I'm just blabbing and I obviously want to watch football and the NFL game's about to start. So Idaho played. Look at the box score. They even tied Washington in the second half, and I'm not sure if they actually covered the full number. It was like 35.5, and I think they lost by 37 or something. But it's a team that probably should have been closer than the final score against Washington. Even if you dive in, they gained a lot more yardage. Not than Washington, but more than a typical 37-point loss would be. Some turnovers bit them, but it's also Mike Leach in FU mode and just throwing all over Idaho for 60 minutes. So I could see this totally getting out of hand as well. I just have to stay away. Anyway, that's everything. That's the games. I'm calling it 2-part video. This one was a little longer, but it's not too bad. It's like a little over an hour total, and we're able to get through all the games. So good luck this weekend. Take care.